For generations, we told ourselves a very clean story about Easter Island. A bold civilization, a remote rock in the middle of the Pacific, and a people so consumed by building colossal stone figures that they tore their own world apart to do it. They cut every tree, they starved, they collapsed. We taught it in schools, we printed it in textbooks, we held it up as the ultimate warning. This is what happens when a society loses control. There's just one problem. It didn't happen that way. New science drawn from genetics, climate data, archaeology, and the stones themselves is dismantling that story piece by piece. And what's emerging in its place isn't a cautionary tale of self-destruction. It's something far more extraordinary. It's a story of survival against odds that would have broken almost anyone else. The standard version goes like this. Polynesian voyagers land on an island 2,200 miles from the nearest shore. They find forests, birds, life. Over generations, rival clans begin carving massive stone figures, the Moai, to assert dominance. Bigger statues, taller platforms, more power. To move them, they use logs as rollers. They cut every tree on the island. Without wood, there are no boats. Without boats, there's no fishing. The soil erodes, crops fail. By the time Europeans arrive in 1722, the island is a ruin. A few thousand survivors surrounded by toppled statues and silence. It's a perfect story, almost too perfect. Because scientists kept going back, they kept drilling into the earth, analyzing sediment layers, studying soil chemistry and climate records. And the more data they gathered, the more that collapse narrative started to crack. Something else had been grinding away at this island for centuries. Something slow, invisible, and absolutely merciless. A drought, not a dry decade. A mega-drought. A sustained multi-generational collapse in rainfall that reshaped the land, thinned the forests, and quietly rewrote the rules of survival on one of the most remote places on Earth. Rapa Nui covers just 63 square miles. No rivers, no long streams. A few volcanic crater lakes that can't support everyone through extended dry periods. Most of the island's fresh water is hidden, seeping down through volcanic rock, collecting underground, bleeding back out near the coastline where land meets sea. In those narrow coastal zones, groundwater mingles with the ocean, but stays drinkable if the salt stays low enough. During a long drought, those spots become everything. Now look at where the Moai stand. Again and again, the statues cluster near those exact coastal groundwater seeps, rising from the earth in the precise locations where fresh water would have surfaced during dry seasons. When researchers mapped this pattern, the question became impossible to ignore. What if the statues marked water? What if they were territorial claims over the most precious resource on the island? On a rock with almost no rivers, controlling a freshwater spring wasn't about wealth. It was about whether your children lived. And inland, the people adapted another way. They built rock gardens, carefully broken stones spread across planting fields to trap moisture in the soil, slow evaporation, and shield crops from the wind. This isn't a society unraveling. This is engineering under pressure. This is a people staring at a hostile environment and deciding to outthink it. But the statues raise another question, one that puzzled the world for centuries. How do you move something that weighs 80 tons across miles of rough volcanic terrain without metal tools, without wheels, without animals? The old answer was logs, an ecological sacrifice. The new answer is stranger and more elegant. A research team built a scaled replica, a Moai weighing just over 4 tons, and attached 3 ropes to it. 18 people took hold. Then they started rocking it. side to side in a slow, controlled rhythm. The statue walked, just like you walk, shifting weight, pivoting forward, step by step. In under 40 minutes, they moved it 300 feet. No logs required. The island's ancient roads were built for exactly this. About 14 feet wide, with a subtle inward curve along the edges. A natural guardrail, keeping a swaying statue upright as it rocked forward. These roads weren't just paths, they were engineering infrastructure designed to move giants. Teams would clear a short stretch ahead, rock the statue forward in steady rhythm, reposition the ropes, clear the next section, and repeat. Methodical, coordinated. The work of a community with shared purpose, not a population spiraling toward collapse. Then the genetic data arrived and it changed everything. Scientists analyzed the genomes of 15 historical Rapa Nui individuals, people who had lived and died on the island centuries ago. They were searching for a specific signal. In genetics, a true population collapse leaves a mark called a bottleneck, a point where numbers fall so catastrophically that genetic diversity craters. The survivors carry it in their DNA like a scar. There was no bottleneck. Not in the 1600s. Not at any point before European contact. The data showed a population that had always been small, likely never exceeding 3,000 people, but stable, continuous, unbroken, 3,000. Not the 15,000 that older theories assumed. A figure that actually matches what those first European visitors recorded when they stepped ashore. The sharp population decline in the data? It arrives in the 1860s. After European contact, not before. The island didn't destroy itself. The island was destroyed. And buried inside that same genetic data is something that rewrites the story even further. Both ancient and modern Rapa Nui individuals carry Native American ancestry. The mixing happened centuries before any European ship ever crossed these waters. Around 1,000 years ago, Polynesian navigators and indigenous people from the coast of South America somehow found each other across thousands of miles of open Pacific. Whether Rapa Nui voyagers sailed east or South Americans sailed west, the contact was real. Archaeology confirms it in the soil itself. At the earliest known settlement on the island, researchers found obsidian blades, volcanic glass cutting tools. Examined under a microscope, those blades carried ancient food residue. Microscopic starch grains, locked into the stone edges. 21 were identifiable. They came from 8 different plants. Guaro, yam, breadfruit, classic Polynesian crops carried across the ocean by the first settlers. And then, sweet potato, cassava, akara, South American crops, native to a continent over 2,000 miles away, found at the very earliest levels of the site. The first inhabitants of Rapa Nui already had South American plants in their hands. They weren't isolated. They were connected, trading, voyaging, exchanging across one of the largest stretches of open water on the planet. These were not a people trapped on a rock, slowly consuming their own future. These were master navigators of a world that had no maps. With every new study, that old story loses another piece of its foundation. What the evidence actually shows is a small community on a remote island, enduring centuries of climate pressure, adapting their agriculture, engineering their infrastructure, and staying connected to the wider world, without any of the resources we assume are necessary for survival. Rapa Nui didn't collapse under the weight of human failure. It endured under the weight of everything else. And those stone giants standing on its shores aren't monuments to a civilization's pride. They mark where life was. They are proof that people stood here, fought for this land, and, for far longer than the old story ever gave them credit for. They won.